Hello, my love, and welcome to the Energy Expansion Podcast. If you're new here, we are so happy to have you. Welcome. And if you're one of our longtime loyal listeners, welcome back, love. You are in for a really powerful, fun, meaningful conversation. I had to take a moment of pause there just for a moment, and I need to let you in on the fact that this is take 2 of this episode. I'm like really gonna bring you in. We're gonna pull back the curtains of today. It's pretty early. It's not even 8 a.m. my time, and so morning voice, where your voice sounds a little different when you haven't really talked very much at the start of the day. That's a little bit of what you're hearing. And so if I sound different and you're trying to pinpoint it, and you're like, Dani, you don't sound sick. I actually feel really good right now physically. You're hearing my morning voice, and never have I ever, up until now, almost 100 episodes in, recorded one this early in the morning. And the other thing that I need to let you in on is that I set aside some time yesterday afternoon to record this, and I was going to use the chunk. I didn't get a chance to finish it, just sake of time. I had to pause where I was, and I needed to shift into the tail end of my day. It was like late afternoon yesterday when I was recording. I was also live streaming it, which I'm not right now in this moment. But I was live streaming the episode on Instagram, and halfway through realized that over on Instagram, my audio had cut out. And so there were pieces of that where people were on the edge of their seat, and all of a sudden they couldn't hear what I was saying anymore. And to top it off, I was way more emotional. There's nothing wrong with our emotions. I'm not sharing yesterday's version of this with you because I was quote unquote too emotional, but I realized like how deeply meaningful this topic is to me, and the emotions were having me feel a little distracted, and I got really easily sidetracked. And so I had every intention of going back in and just recording the last kind of like 5-minute close out of yesterday's episode and releasing that instead of creating a new one. But something in me this morning, we'll call it God, we'll call it intuition, prompted me to take another stab at it, just to start over, not really starting from scratch, because the heart of what I shared yesterday is still the heart of it, the core messaging. And you know that I like to work in 3s. And so in my mind and in my heart, as I was navigating what wanted to come through, there were absolutely these sort of 3 pillars for today's conversation, which I want to just dive right into it with you. And I want to start by sharing that we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite things of all time, which is faith, which is God, and also a beautiful question that came in from someone inside of what I like to call our DKC Soul Fam. She sent me a private message essentially asking, where do God and the world of manifestation? That was like how she led with the question. And I loved this question, but she was saying like, where do they intersect? Do they actually intersect? That she's feeling and seeing different conflicting messages around all of this. And she said, Dani, I trust you, and I want to know what you have to say about this. And so we're absolutely going to dive into that. So let's try this again. And the feels, the tears, the moments here and there to pause and collect myself might be just as present as they were yesterday, again, because some of what I'm going to share with you is really deeply personal, really near and dear to my heart. And I realized yesterday, mid-episode, that it was day 25, which means today is day 26 of my luteal phase. And I am really in my feels at this point of my cycle. And so again, nothing bad or wrong about it, but knowing your emotional highs and lows and your energetic highs and lows is really important. So let's dive into this conversation about faith. And one of the very first things, these kind of 3 big rocks that I want to share with you, starts with an answered prayer. This is a prayer that I've been praying for probably close to 15 years. How do I know that? Because this prayer has to do with my marriage and ultimately now at this point, my family. When my husband and I got married, it was just us. And then we started having kids about 2 years later and had 3 kids total over the last 15 years. So my husband and I have been together for 16 years, married for 15 years, and my faith has always been really important to me. And also there's been seasons of life where it's sort of ebbed and flowed. And I don't know, this is not true for all people. I was going to make sort of a blanket statement. I hope this isn't going to be true for my children, but I think that there's something interesting about that sort of rebellious, I was never too big of a rebel, but like the rebellious high school era. And I went from public school to a Catholic private school, not necessarily by choice, not my choice. It was my mom's choice. And looking back now as a parent in hindsight, I agree with that choice. And I'd actually probably make the same choice for my kids. But I personally struggled with that choice a little bit. I don't think I voiced that. I was always someone who went with the flow. I didn't really use my voice. I didn't really speak up. But I feel like I would, and even to this day, sometimes I can be a little passive aggressive. And so I resisted parts of feeling like I was quote unquote being forced into this religious setting when it wasn't something I wanted. I think deep down I also did know it was best. And then when I went off to college, good old San Diego State University, I did not go to church a single Sunday my 4 years there. I think I actually did start going to church with some friends I graduated from state with. They had invited me, and so I started exploring my faith again. And I really like the analogy of having a walk with God. And so I kind of stepped back into a dedicated walk with God. And again, it ebbed and flowed. And then came the time where I met my husband, and that just wasn't really at the center of our relationship. It wasn't a focal point of who we were together or who we were individually. He didn't go to church. I was sort of going intermittently with friends here and there, so I'd stopped going. But I don't know, I think there's something really interesting about becoming a parent. If you're a parent, you probably know what I'm talking about, where when you are bringing a baby into the world, when you are literally creating life, there's this desire I know that I had, and I feel like I talk to other moms who have this desire to have some sort of a spiritual structure or framework, support around how we choose to guide and steward these little people that we're raising up, hopefully to be really great humans, like adults one day. And I don't think that there's one right way to do this by any means. And, you know, when I talk about my faith, I'm really just sharing my personal perspective. I never, ever want people to feel like I'm pushing something on them or telling you how you need to live your life. I wouldn't do that in the realm of faith or religion or spirituality. I also wouldn't do that in the realm of the work I do as a life and mindset coach in the deep inner healing. I'm here to share what I've learned. I'm here to share the tools with some of what I'm trained in. It's backed by science. I can share the studies, the facts, the statistics around more of the faith component that's less rooted in science and fact. And I think that's what makes it really intriguing to me, because I am so much more of a feeler, of an intuitive person, that I kind of enjoy when there are no facts, when there is no quote unquote proof. And I think that there actually is proof. There's a book I'm reading right now, of course, in this moment when I want to remember the title, it's eluding me, but I'm pretty sure it's called Proof for God. And it's a story about someone who wasn't a believer, and he's a neurosurgeon, and all these crazy things happened to him that were literally impossible, but they did happen, and all this stuff. I haven't finished the book yet. I digress. This is always just me sharing what I think could be helpful and insightful for you. It might inspire you. It might motivate you in some way. Ideally, my goal is that it opens you up to a new way of thinking. It creates new neural pathways. That's really how we change our life, is when we can start thinking about things in a new and different way, when someone can help us get popped out of our own box, our own way of doing things. It literally opens us up to an entirely new reality. And so going back to this faith journey, when I became a mom, I was feeling disconnected from myself, disconnected from God. I was starting my business and things weren't working. And I just felt like, you know what? I just need some Jesus. I just need some God, some worship music, some guidance, a really powerful Sunday morning message. And so when my first daughter, who just turned 13, was a teeny tiny baby, a couple of months old, I started going to church. And it felt kind of uncomfortable because I went alone at first, and then I started bringing her support. And I would invite my husband, and it just really wasn't his jam. Every Sunday, I would invite him, and he would lovingly and sometimes not so lovingly decline. And I loved how I felt after I went to church. And so although I didn't love going alone, what I realized was this was about my relationship with God and the benefits that I felt inside of me. And so pretty early on, I was able to release any attachment I had or feels I had around quote unquote having to go alone. And I went pretty consistently to church most Sundays since then for over a decade, and invited my husband to church every Sunday that I went and heard no and no and no and no. I would jokingly call my husband what is often referred to as a creaster, which is someone who goes to church on Christmas and Easter, the big religious holidays, or I should say the big Christian religious holidays. I know that there's hundreds of religious holidays because there's hundreds of religions, but we're talking about more traditional Christianity when it comes to the churches, the houses of God that I was choosing to attend. And this year on my vision board, I mean, I've had this secret desire, maybe not so secret now that I'm sharing it with you, to go to church as a family. This is where I started crying yesterday, and I feel the tears welling up in my eyes. It's such a simple thing, and I think it's a thing that a lot of families do together, and I love that for them, and they don't even think twice about it, and it's something that I have literally prayed for and wanted and craved. I would stand in the house of worship by myself. I mean, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Sundays, and I'd be there worshiping, feeling so thankful. And I'd also have this little piece inside of me that said, I want to be here with my people, like my family. And so I make a vision board every single year. I have a physical vision board that I hang on my office wall. I can actually see it right now. And I create a digital vision board as well. This goes on the back of my phone. So unlike most moms and wives, the background of my phone is not a picture of my family or my children or me and my husband or some glorious family vacation destination that we went on. No, my friend, it is my vision board for this year, my digital vision board. I do this every year. It's a lot of fun. Fun fact, my husband let me create one for him. So he has his own version of his man vision board, and I love that for him. But right at the center of my 2026 digital vision board is a beautiful picture. Oh my goodness, I'm going to need to post this on my social media so that you can see this, and I can even teach you really quickly and show you how fun and easy it is to create one of these digital vision boards. But right at the center is basically like a silhouette of what is very obviously a family of 5. There is a man standing right at the center with 2 little girls on one side, and then his wife on the other side, and a little boy in the woman's arms. And if you don't know anything about my family, that's literally my family, like our layout, not in the picture. And it's this silhouette, so you can see their figures, and you can tell that they're standing in front of a great big cross that's being illuminated. There's a light on the other side. And I remember finding this image earlier this year, and I was very intentional. Like when I went out looking for this image, I knew I wanted a family 5. I knew I wanted faith-based family images. I knew I wanted a cross, something that would represent faith. And so that was at the center of my vision board. I look at it many times a day, not all day, every day, but I don't know, we're probably reaching for our phones hundreds of times a day. Yeah. So I look at it hundreds of times a day. This goes to show, I think, this is one of the things that proves that vision boards are powerful, that they work. And I'm going to tie this back into the conversation that we're going to have in just a little bit around the question that was presented by someone in our DKC Soul Fam and around manifestation. I recently saw a Christian-based content creator kind of poo-pooing and talking about how if you are a believer, if you are a follower of Christ, that you should not be making vision boards. And I actually think that is one of the silliest things that I've ever heard for various reasons. And we'll get into that in just a minute. So I put this at the center of my vision board because it's something I've wanted for a long time. And one of the secrets to manifestation, or how to really harness the energy of powerful manifestation, is to get clear on what you want, your deepest desires, and then to detach from them, which I did that a long time ago. It would be really nice. I would love it. It would be a literal dream come true if we went to church as a family of 5, if faith was at the center of everything we did as a family. And also if it's not, I'm okay, because I have my journey, my walk, my faith. And so I have to tell you that I have been beside myself. Here comes the emotion. When earlier this year, my husband started expressing interest in going to church. He was asking me about what I was learning at the Sunday services that I was going to, like what was the pastor preaching about and what did I learn? And I loved sharing those things with him. And unbeknownst to me, in sort of the background of his work day, he'd have sermons on from different, specifically local churches. And he was trying to find, I love that he did this like all on his own. There's something about this that makes that even more special. He was wanting to go to church. He was feeling curious, but he wanted to get a feel for the different preaching styles of local pastors to see who he felt most connected to. I think that that's really important. And I jokingly, but also not so jokingly, talk about the importance of church shopping. And every time we've ever moved anywhere, I have taken that very seriously for myself. And I mean, I have tried in certain areas we've lived, I've tried upwards of like 7 or 8 churches in any given 15-mile radius, because it's important that I feel like wherever I go to church, it feels like an extension of home. It feels good. It feels aligned with my values and my beliefs. Yes, from one church to another, you're going to be able to sense what's at the core, what's at the heart of that particular church. And so he had come to me and said, hey, there's a church that I want to check out, a local church. And inside I was freaking out in the best possible way, but I didn't want to get too excited. I didn't want to freak him out with my excitement or have my excitement have him change his mind. So I was like, okay, great. Like, let's do that. And so we have gone in less than the last 3 months. And remember, if you've been with us for a while, we were traveling the entire month of July. I was traveling the first half, it was just me and the kids. The second half, it was me, my kids, my husband. So we, funny enough, weren't actually going to church, but we were listening on those Sundays. We were listening to live sermons from different local churches here in East County, San Diego. And so even before we left on our vacations, he started coming to what I was calling my home church. And he liked it enough, but he was feeling drawn to this other pastor. And I didn't really know why. And since we've been back from our vacations, we've gone every Sunday. We're very excited about the upcoming Sundays. It's really sweet and so heartwarming how my husband is thinking about which church service time we're going to go to. He's almost like prioritizing our weekend plans to ensure that we're able to attend a church service. I'm blown away. So we've gone to this church the last 3 Sundays. We'll be going again this upcoming Sunday. And just a few days ago after church, so just at the time of me recording this episode for you, with you, it was less than 48 hours ago. It was after church on this past Sunday, and I was in the kitchen and I told him, I said, I'm really happy. Like, I'm not gonna get overly invested in this. There's no pressure for you to come to church with me for the next 1 million Sundays of our lives. But I'm so happy. It feels so good. Here come the tears again. It feels so good to get to do this with you, to go to church with you. And I said, do you mind me asking, like, what was your change of heart? Because I invited you to church almost every Sunday for over a decade. And I'm not complaining at all. I'm just really curious, like what's going on in your head? What's going on in your heart? And what he shared with me, and I got to do some fact checking after I record this, but the particular pastor who I also really enjoy at the church that my husband felt drawn to go to, he's been their lead pastor for quite some time, very, very, very long time. And what my husband knew that I didn't know until this past Sunday, because the pastor talked about it a little bit as part of his message this week, is that this particular pastor lost his wife to cancer not even a year and a half ago. I think it was 14 or 15 months ago. And they have a beautiful family. They've created a beautiful family together. And my guesstimate is that they have been married for somewhere in the realm of 20 to 30 years. I know that's a big range, but based on their age, based on his story, based on what my husband has shared with me, the ages of their kids, definitely over 20 years. And here he is, less than a year and a half later, standing up, preaching about the goodness of God. And this past Sunday, it was actually a sermon all about grief. If you are looking for a really powerful message about grief, send me a message and I will send you the YouTube recording. I'm sure I can find it for you and get you access to that. It was so beautifully done. And I think grief is such an important and hard to talk about topic. And when it is coming from someone who has been through one of the most painful things anyone could ever go through, there's other painful things, but this is a big one, it lands different. And so my husband said, I feel drawn to go to church and to learn from this particular man because I want to understand how someone could go through something that difficult and still have such a strong faith and still believe so deeply in God. That has me feeling really curious. And I thought that that was so beautiful, that I hate that this pastor lost his beautiful wife. And part of what he was preaching about was we go through things sometimes so that we can help other people and change lives in ways that we don't even know that we are. And so through the loss of his wife and the love that he has for God, that he has for Jesus, and the way that he so passionately preaches every single Sunday, it is opening up my husband's heart and mind to God in a way that I don't think I ever could. So I'm just beside myself, feeling so incredibly grateful for this answered prayer. Amen. Amen, amen, amen. And we're going to transition now into what feels like kind of an abrupt transition. And that is something I was journaling about just a week ago. So if you were with us on last week's episode, at the time of us dropping it, it was August 12th. It was a new moon and eclipse in Leo. I don't think I'd shared with you that I had plans later that night to attend a local fire eclipse moon sister circle that I was very excited about. I loved it. It was amazing. I'm so glad that I went. And we'll segue into this by bringing my husband in. Since he's already here, we'll keep him here for a second. And as I'm getting ready to go to this event, my kids are like, "Oh, Mom, where are you going?" And my husband, before I can say anything, jokingly goes, "Oh, your mom's going to some sort of voodoo event." I'm like, why would you say that? That is not true. I'm going to hang out with some local friends. It's a moon circle. We're going to pray some prayers. We're going to journal. We're probably going to burn stuff, which I do with my kids. I should say my older daughters. I don't burn things with my toddler yet. That doesn't feel like a safe or wise parenting choice. And it was funny-ish, but there was a piece of me that was like, why do people do that? Why do people place this kind of negative connotation on things that they don't understand or things that they don't participate in? And then it reminded me of the fact that I personally led this exact circle just 3 months ago. I was invited to lead this group of women at this exact location. It was beautiful. I loved it. And because I was leading a few months ago, I was responsible for doing more of the marketing and more of the promotion than if I were not to be leading. And there were a couple of women who I reached out to. I actually reached out to several handfuls of local women. You might be listening and you might be one of them. And there's one woman, I love her dearly. And I know that the last couple of years, she has really committed to her own walk with God, which I'm super excited for her. And I celebrate her in so many ways. And also what I have noticed is that when people are committing for the first time or recommitting to their walk with God, there can be this tendency, and it's not good, bad, right, or wrong per se. Like, I get it. There's no judgment here whatsoever. Me judging this woman or anyone else, you might be able to relate to this. You might have friends who you think of when I say this, but when they pick up a Bible or when they're ready to get to know Jesus, they literally cut off anything that feels foreign to that. And again, no judgment. I understand it, but I have a lot of feels about this because I think that there are people who are coming to know Jesus and are reading the Bible for the first time, which again, I think is life-changing and amazing. And I think that when you are a person of faith and you know Jesus, there's a different sweetness and richness that life takes on. I really think that it is such an advantage to be a believer, to follow Jesus, to understand some of the core teachings of the Bible. Oh my gosh, we're about to go on a rabbit hole that I was not planning on going down. I didn't go on this rabbit hole yesterday, but it's interesting because I think that there's this confusing thing that happens for people who are newer to faith where they are afraid of things that they don't need to be afraid of. I think that it's really interesting. I'm being careful with my words here. I want to record another episode. I want to sit with this a little more and record another episode about it. Anyways, when I reached out to this woman several months ago, she basically shared that she didn't feel comfortable or safe in rooms like that. And I said, you know what? I get it. I had a feeling when I reached out to you, something told me it would be a no for you, but I know that you've asked me to share about when I'm hosting local events, and this is one of those instances. And the thing I need you to know is there's nothing about me as a person that made her feel uncomfortable or unsafe. It was the fact that it was being marketed as something that had to do with aligning with the moon, basically. And it was just really interesting. And I had this laughable moment when I was sitting at that event exactly a week ago. It was, again, the Leo new moon. We were in an eclipse. We were working with the element of fire at the circle last week, and there were some really beautiful prompts around the identities that we've outgrown and the patterns that we feel complete with and things we've been carrying that we want to set down. And as we're journaling about this, and in my case, praying over these things and asking God directly for guidance. I'm not asking the moon for guidance. I'm not asking the fire for guidance. I'm asking God for guidance. And I had these really beautiful, profound realizations in that room. I literally heard God speak to me in that room. It brought me to tears as I was writing this down in my journal and as I was sharing this out loud with the women there. And every single nugget of wisdom, every insight came directly from God and had to do with my walk with God and my faith. And what I realized the next morning when I was journaling was God walks with you in every room you enter. This is not some crazy voodoo event. This is not anywhere where myself or anyone else needed to feel uncomfortable or not safe. If you choose God, if you welcome God into your heart, He doesn't stop at a particular door because He doesn't like it. He's going to walk right into that room with you. And yes, it was a moon circle. There's a big distinction here, and this is going to be a really beautiful segue into the final part of this. The question that my client and the woman who, again, I so lovingly call it our DKC Soul Fam, the question that she popped in, but people feel very conflicted. I get it that there might be someone who is new to following Christ and they might hear moon circle and say, ooh, no, that's demonic, or the devil lives there, or I can't go there. And they might look at me and judge me and say, Dani, for someone who's spent her entire life. All right, love, real quick pause because I have to tell you about something that is truly life-changing. If you've been in my world for any amount of time, then there is a 99.9% chance that you have heard me talk about Energy Expansion Academy, which is my signature group coaching program where I teach the exact tools, rituals, mindset shifts that helped me create a life that goes beyond my wildest dreams and has transformed the lives of hundreds of women that I've had the honor of serving. And for the first time ever, it is now available as a self-paced experience. That means you get to move through this powerful transformation on your own terms, in your own timing, and in full alignment with your life. This is for the woman who's ready to shift her energy, elevate her mindset, and finally become the most confident, fulfilled, and successful version of herself. without the hustle, without the overwhelm, and without the second guessing. If you've been feeling the nudge to join us inside of EEA, then this, my love, is your sign. You'll find the link in the show notes or just DM me EEA on Instagram and I'll personally send it your way. Now, let's get back to the episode that you came for. With God, committed to God, knowing God, how do you confidently and in integrity walk into these spaces? And the truth is, I love the moon. The moon is amazing and it's beautiful and it's powerful. We know scientifically that the moon is what rules water. Water is a huge part of this planet. Water is literally a part of who we are. In our physical body, a huge part of the way that we are made is water. Who do you think hung the moon? Who do you think created these physical bodies? Did you know that the same molecular makeup of the stars, the same things that the stars are made of, is what can be found in the human body, in our bones? Do I think that's a coincidence? No. Do I think that we have a good, loving, beautiful, masterful creator of all of the most amazing masterpieces named God? Yes, I do. So I love going to moon circles. I love honoring the element of fire because I'm grateful. First and foremost, I go to the creator first. I'm not worshiping or looking for guidance from the creation. I celebrate the creation. I have my crystals around me. I've got my rose quartz. I've got this beautiful feather saging wand. It has the feathers of birds from here on my property that my amazing, talented neighbor made me. There's a peacock feather and all of these things that she used to make this beautiful smudging wand came from the earth. Who do you think created the earth? What a blessing. Yes, I'm going to hold this dear. Yes, I'm going to use this with reverence and have so much gratitude, right? And so in my mind, it's a little wild how people are like, well, if you're going to follow Jesus, you need to throw away all your crystals. I think that's actually doing a disservice to the creator. I'm going to love and I'm going to celebrate and I am going to get excited about and honor parts of creation. I am part of creation. You are part of creation. I love me. I love you. I don't worship me. I don't worship you. So this really comes down to the energy that we're leading with when it comes to where are we seeking guidance? What are we worshiping? What are we putting at the center of our lives? Are you with me? Same thing. Right next to me, I have one of my favorite angel card decks. I have crystal decks and oracle decks and guidance decks, every kind of deck, you name it, at no exaggeration. I have over 30 of them. I don't worship these. I don't treat these like the end all be all. Sometimes if I'm having a hard time feeling connected to God, I will pick up one of these decks. I will put it over my heart and I will say, okay, God, okay, Spirit, okay, angels and guides. Yes, I believe in angels. I believe that we have loved ones and people that we've never even met who love us, who have crossed over, who are here with us, who are working on God's behalf. And I will say, what message do you have for me today? And I will pull a card and I feel like that is a way that God is working through these beautiful creations. God uses people to change lives. God works miracles through people. Who do you think created the card deck that's in my hand? A person, a beautiful person who God created their mind and gave them the gift of creativity. I'm not going to burn them. I'm not going to throw them in the trash can. Now, what's interesting is different seasons, I feel more and less connected to certain things. Like, to be completely honest, over the last couple of months, I haven't felt very drawn to pulling cards. And that's okay. That doesn't mean they're bad or they're wrong or I'm like, oh my gosh, some awakening that I have to throw everything away. Absolutely not. That feels quite extreme to me. But what it means is I actually just want to sit in silence. I want to grab my journal. I want to do stream of conscious divine guidance journaling with God. That's how I prefer to receive the messages. I want to go out in nature. I'm going to close my eyes. The other day, the wind got really loud and I was outside in the backyard with my family and I said, everybody, let's get really quiet and let's see if we can hear what God is using the wind to tell us. Do you hear anything there? So the point of this part of today's episode is that God is with you all the time when you choose to let him in. It doesn't matter where you go, what room you find yourself in, he will be there with you. And I mean, if there's a deeper conversation here, there's more nuance here, there's certain biblical references. Someone could listen to some of what I've said today and pick it apart and argue it, and that's fine. You're welcome to do that. I want to wrap this part up here because what I've shared has come through. This feels good and complete for the moment of now. I do think that there are ways that not so great spirits and energies could use things that look like light. And I think that deception is absolutely a thing. But again, if you commit to walking with Jesus, to having God in your mind and at the center of your heart, these are things that you don't have to worry about as much, not to freak anybody out. So God is with you every room you walk into. That is what I say to my husband when he accuses me of doing voodoo, or to the woman who says, Dani, I really want to be in community with you, but not if it looks like that. No judgment. You don't have to come to the things, but this is my take on this. And I'm sharing this with you because I get asked these types of questions on a very regular basis. Now, third and finally, I want to dive into this question. Let me actually take just a second. I actually want to bring it up so that I can read the question to you in its entirety. I loved how this came through. I feel like I've indirectly answered bits and pieces of this question with where we were just coming out of. But here's the question. She says, I'd love to hear your thoughts on something I've been thinking about lately. I've heard people say that manifestation and having faith in Jesus can contradict each other. I'm curious about your perspective on this. Since we both have a strong faith in God, yes, amen to that, I'd really value your thoughts on how you see manifestation fitting into Christian faith. I've been exploring more of this lately and would love to hear your take on it. Yeah, so when it comes to true manifestation, there's so many things I want to say about this. And I loved that we started today's conversation again with vision boarding and how Christian creators, I saw it recently, but it's not the first time I've seen it, are like, don't make a vision board. And I'm laughing because I make a minimum of 3 or 4, sometimes 5 every single year. And I love it. Here's a few things that I want you to know. At the heart of manifestation is the law of attraction. The law of attraction is a universal law that basically states, if we simplify it as much as possible, it states that like attracts like. And we're speaking through the language of frequency. Okay, so I'm gonna pin that for a second. The other thing I need you to know is that there are other universal laws. There's actually many universal laws, and universal laws state the way that things operate in any given universe. And we live in the universe that we're in right now, right? And there is not actually so much a universal law of gravity, but the law of gravity absolutely applies to planet Earth. So this is an example I talk about this a lot because I think very few people would deny the law of gravity, and it's not something you think about. It's just something that is at play at all time. And so I'm weaving this in because I believe that when God, who I believe is the creator, created Earth, he did so with great intention. And gravity was part of that creation and part of that intention, as well as all of the other universal laws, including the law of attraction. And there's so many elements, a lot of energetics and manifestation and law of attraction and other types of universal laws and frequency. A lot of it is rooted in quantum physics. It's things that can be measured. I really truly believe that everything that can be measured, everything that is that is real, that is tangible, is part of God's unique design. I don't think that any of it was an accident or a coincidence. And so I believe in manifestation. And saying that you don't believe in manifestation, I don't want to like point fingers or make anybody feel bad or wrong. I think it's silly because that's like saying, well, I don't believe in the law of attraction, which would equate to me as saying, I don't believe in the law of gravity. Like those can be pretty big jumps there. But in my mind, this is how it works. And so when it comes to manifestation, I think the slippery slope, the part that gets a little sticky for believers, is that it feels like there's no room for God. Right? Because I used to say things like, you're the creator of your own reality. And I believe that to an extent-ish, but instead of saying I'm the creator of my own reality, really where I stand now is I am in constant co-creation. Who am I co-creating with? I'm co-creating with God. I believe through and through and through and through that God's will, God's plan for my life is greater than mine. God's will be done. I love dreaming and I love visuals and I love journaling and I love playing and I love thinking big and I love being future oriented. And I think that God loves all of that for us. I think that God thinks it's so cute and so fun when we make our vision boards and when we dream and when we journal. I think that God wants us to have fun. I think that God planted childlike wonder in my heart to share it with other people. I believe that God likes when we believe in magic and miracles. I think that all of those things fit in together. I think that God loves to delight and surprise us, and God can only delight and surprise us to the extent that we believe in the miracles, that we believe in Him. There's all of these components. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this conversation. And so going back to the vision board, I don't worship my vision board. I look at my vision board and I like how it makes me feel. It makes me feel really good. I like the vibration that I feel inside of my body when I give myself permission to dream big. And I don't think that God places dreams or desires on our heart by accident. I believe that He puts them there for a reason. And I think that there are dreams that don't always come to fruition. I don't necessarily have all of the answers, but I hope that you're picking up what I'm putting down here. The other thing, and we'll start to wrap up here in the next couple of minutes. The other thing that, I believe, because I'm trained in this, one of the things I've spent many years dedicating myself to learning is neurolinguistic programming, which is the language of the mind. God designed our minds in a certain way. And I think that everything that I've learned, everything that I have committed my life's work to mastery aligns so perfectly with the way that God has created us. And what we know scientifically is that there's a part of our mind known as the reticular activating system, which is part of our subconscious. And when we start to place things in our awareness, we draw in more of that. That is not directly the same exact thing as the law of attraction, but it's what makes the law of attraction and manifestation work. And I think that that is by design. I don't think it's an accident that God created us with powerful minds, these machines that He has intended really good and beautiful things, but He's also given us free will so we can choose how we use our minds. And sometimes we don't use our minds in really great ways. And some people spend their entire life treating their mind like a trash can, and God doesn't want that, but He gave us free will so we can do that. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to fill my mind and I'm going to fill my heart and I'm going to fill my energy with good and beautiful things. And everything that I'm looking on my vision board right now, like it's all nature related things and love and things that I feel like God wants for me, God would want for all of us. And so I hope all of this is landing. I'm thinking about you who asked this question. I'm so glad that you did. And I'm hoping that this is helpful. So in my mind, in my humble opinion, there is a perspective in which there is absolutely zero conflict, contradiction between being a woman of faith, being a follower of Christ, being a believer in God, and manifestation and crystals and beautiful cards with beautiful messages and images and different types of fun manifestation journaling practices. In my mind, it all ties back to God. All credit goes to the ultimate creator. I do think that there are certain slippery slopes. I do think that if we try to be the one and only creator of our reality, and we're approaching manifestation and vision boards and reality creation from a very human, unconnected, from God perspective, I think that's where some of the contradictions can live. I think that if you see things like I've been seeing on the internet around throw away your crystals, or you're not allowed to make vision boards anymore, I think that's where it's coming from. The energy and intention from which you move, who you give credit to, who you put at the top of all of this, who is at the center of all of it, matters. It matters, it matters, it matters. And I've felt this way for a really long time, and I have never, ever, not for a single day or a single moment, felt conflicted. And I feel grateful for that. And I think it's one of the ways that God is choosing to use me in this season, to use my story, to use my mind, to share things with you in this way. You know, I really hope that we were able to simplify some of this. I hope that you're leaving today. Again, I shared this in the beginning, maybe with a renewed sense of hope. We started today with me sharing an answered prayer, and maybe there's some prayers of your own that you are realizing right now have been answered, or prayers that you're waiting to be answered. Some prayers take 5 minutes, some prayers take 15 years. The truth of the matter is they're not any less special depending on how long they take to be answered. And honestly, some of them are well worth the wait. They're even more meaningful when they take a little longer. But I am going to hold the intention. I'm going to manifest that your prayers and my prayers are answered as quickly as possible, because that's what humans like to do. We like to do that. So I'll let my human be in the driver's seat for a moment and get excited about how quickly can we have all of the miracles happen. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that energy is really playful. So I'm hoping that maybe there's a renewed sense of hope, excitement, possibility. Maybe there's some clarity, a new way of thinking about things, knowing and feeling the power and the truth that God is with you everywhere you go, every room you walk into. If you choose that, if you invite him into your mind, if you invite him into your heart, he is there. Okay? So I love this. This feels like a really beautiful place to wrap up. I adore your questions. You could probably tell that this one question, these 2 sentences that were sent to me in a private message, created such a rich, fun, powerful conversation. Again, as I'm talking, I'm not saying these things out loud because I'm like, Dani, wrap it up, babe. Like, we gotta go. But it's sparking all of these other conversations that I'm going to have with you on future episodes. So where I'm going with that is send me your questions, please. Please text me, DM me, WhatsApp me, email me, wherever we're connected. Your questions, your curiosities are welcomed here. There is no judgment. This is a super safe space, and I can answer you directly. Or if it's something that I get asked often or feel like, we should probably have a podcast episode around this, then guess what? We, my love, will create you your very own podcast episode. We've done that a few times. That was a big part of what we did together today. So I always love hearing from you. If you feel like today's episode would bring joy to someone, would be supportive and helpful to someone in your life, please take a moment to share this with them. I always appreciate when you listen and then you screenshot and you share on your social media and you tag me. That is probably my number one love language. That means more than you know. And if you're curious about ways to work together, you can find all of that in the show notes. You can also DM me and we can explore what some next steps for us would look like together. So I love you, and we'll see you on the next one.